welcome. I'm Terri Meyer, and today you're joining me on my Plein Air Painting and Pastels channel. I am in Wooster, Ohio, or right outside of Wooster, Ohio, at the Pine Tree Barn, which is a furniture store restaurant. And they have this beautiful scenery. You can sit outside on the patio, and it overlooks this lake with all these pine trees, a beautiful vista. And so what I'm going to do today is set up and capture what I'm looking at. It's late October. The weather is gorgeous. It's in the 70s. It's sunny, just a gentle light breeze. And so it's a perfect day for being outdoors and painting. And I want to say a big thank you to the Pine Tree Barn for allowing me to come on location and paint. My name is Terri Meyer, and this is where I share my knowledge of painting plein air in soft pastels. In this 30-minute landscape painting experience, you will feel the thrills and the challenges that I encounter as a painter. If this interests you, consider subscribing to my channel to be notified of future videos. In this episode, I will be painting a beautiful autumn scene recorded live at the Pine Tree Barn outside Wooster, Ohio. I will walk you through step by step through the process of a plein air pastel painting from the first brush stroke until the completion of a beautiful, colorful autumn scene. I will narrate the entire process, sharing professional techniques and strategies for capturing the living landscape into a realistic painting. There are many challenges to painting outdoors, and one of those challenges today was the video quality. Did not turn out as well due to the fact that my easel was set up in the shade, so my apologies in advance for the poor quality footage. To assist you on your plein air journey, I've compiled 16 tips to making your plein air painting a success. To get your copy, click on the link in the description below. Now, let's get started. Meet me back at the easel. Okay, I've done a quick sketch of what I'm going to be painting today. Basically, it's all pine trees and water and sky, and so this is the design that I've decided on. So I'm just getting ready to do a quick sketch on the pastel mat, and we can get started in the painting. Okay, so I'm going to establish my sky first, and I'm just taking a dark blue pencil, lightly putting in the horizon line, and then the focal point is going to be this tree line back in here. This is it almost looks like an island sitting in the pond or lake. So it comes around like this, and then it comes like this. So this is all water, and there's pine trees in the foreground. And in the wintertime, around Christmas, they sell pine trees, and they've been doing that for many, many years. So this kind of comes out like this, and there's some trees in here. And a lot of this, the light's coming from this direction here, so the trees are lit on the right side. So I'm making note of that. And then this tree line comes up like this, comes down to about here, and then there's looks like a little causeway, a road even, that comes across here like this, and it's fairly light green. It's in the light, and then there's some little pine trees that are flanking the road, and I want to put those in because they're very light against the backdrop. So that'll make those stand out. And it is a very lovely feature. And then behind this is another pond. So I want to make sure I get that in there. And then there's another set of tree line. And then there's the nice thing that I like about this design or composition is you've got different layers of distance in the trees. So back here is going to be very light and purple, and as you come forward, then you start seeing more blues and some greens. And so these are pretty dark, these trees in here. They come up to about here, and that distant tree line is showing through. So I'm just making note of that. And then I have some beautiful pine trees here. I'm just going to put a couple that's going to keep your eye. See, when I'm going to put a big pine tree, which I am actually seeing, I'm going to put it here. It's in the foreground. Looks like it's a blue spruce. Okay, and it comes up here, and that's going to bring your eye back here. It's going to keep you into the painting. And there's some smaller ones, and I'm just going to kind of use triangles, and they're all over the place, these little trees, which makes this composition so lovely. Okay, and then there's some little ones here, another big one. I think I'm not going to put, actually I'm seeing the tree come up to this level, and I'm going to keep it lower because I want this tree line to be a focal point in the painting. And I noticed that this is kind of the painting is in shadow, and I hope that the video turns out here. I don't really have any other place to set up to get this vantage point. So again, these are hints of pine trees that I'm putting in right now, and I don't need to do a whole lot. And I'll do that in the end. Okay, so I've established, I know it's a very rough drawing, but I've established where I want to go. The sky is so light. It's a very light baby blue, and it's got a little bit of yellow pink at the horizon. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do, is I'm going to find a nice beautiful blue, and this is almost, it could be a little bit darker than this. Hi! Had somebody come and question if I had permission to be here, and I got permission from the owner, so we're good to go. Make sure that you do that when you plein air paint, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble by going on a property without permission. And that's too yellow. I need a soft pink. There we go. This is what I need right here. In an effort to speed up the painting process, I time-lapsed the video, and I'm just going to tell you the steps that I'm taking to create this painting. So I'm using a very soft blue and a very soft pink at the horizon line. And I'm looking at purples because I'm getting ready to set in the tree line that's the furthest back. And so now I'm putting that in. And I'm looking at it thinking, it might be a little too dark, but I can always lighten it by layering a lighter color over it. Now, I use blending sticks when I paint in pastels. A lot of people stroke their colors together, but my preference is using a blending stick, because to me that's more like a paintbrush. So again, I'm always looking at the painting, and I'm looking at the view, and I'm translating. I'm saying, what color is it? How dark, how light is it in comparison to, let's say, the sky? And so that's how I determine my values. It's a comparison method. Is it darker? Is it lighter? And so it's a dance throughout the entire painting of, okay, does it have more blue, more purple, more green, more yellow in it? And so I pick those colors. Now here I'm adding a little more blue on the left-hand side, because I see more blue in that tree line. And below the tree line, I'm adding more of a gray-green. And it's a little warmer, and it's about the same value, maybe just slightly darker. And so I'm going back and forth with the tree lines, just developing them, blocking them in first, trying to get the colors right, the colors and the values, and just assessing. And one of the drawbacks when you're using pastels is you have to have a lot of colors because it's not like oil paints where you can just make your own color. You can blend the colors, but it's not the same as in oil painting at all. So you have to have quite a few variations of colors in your pastel set. Now what I'm doing there, you see that lighter green, those are trees that are on the causeway, I guess, that really stand out. They're being bathed in sunlight. So I wanted to put those in so I didn't lose those. And I'm continuing to put more of the background tree lines in. There was like 3 different tree lines, and that's what made the painting visually appealing. Was you could see the distance based on the values of the tree lines. So the farthest back was the lightest, and then it gradually got darker in color as the tree lines came forward. And it's those little details that you have to notice when you're a plein air painter to make your work look realistic. Because if you make everything the same value, then you lose your dimension. Now I'm blocking in the water. This is a 30-acre lake that's man-made, and so I'm just getting the blue in there, and eventually I think I'm going to lighten it up, but I'm starting with a deeper color, and then I'm going to layer over top of it. The left-hand side is a lighter blue than the right-hand side, and that's being observed as I'm painting this. And so I try to find the right color right off the bat, but that's not always the case if I don't have it in my pastel set. So you have to improvise, and if you can improvise with at least the right value, it's going to make your painting read properly. So now I notice I put some kind of a rust color in there, and I do that a lot under green, so the green is toned down. Sometimes pastel greens are a little too bright, and so if you do an underpainting of the rust color, orange color, it tones that green down because it will show through and blend with that. So if you notice, I work pretty much top down. I always start with sky, and then I work downward. And I develop, sometimes I block it all in first, and sometimes I develop areas and then work down and develop the next area. It just depends on the flow of the painting. I let it speak to me how it wants to be painted. I don't always do everything the same every time, but I do some things the same every time. Like I always do the composition, thumbnail sketch of what my design is going to look like, and I do a line drawing, usually a very sketchy, not very detailed, but it's a roadmap to what I'm going to be painting, and it solidifies it in my mind. And then I start with the block in. And like I said, usually I start with the sky, always the sky if it has a sky in it, and move downward. Now the focal point is that middle island that you see there's no pastels in yet. And sometimes I leave the focal point for last, so I can really pay attention and put more detail into that than the rest of the painting. So the other tree lines are just a backdrop supporting that little island there. Now, when I was outdoors observing the scene, there was a lot more color in the trees because it was October, fall in Ohio, and I saw a lot of oranges and yellows and things like that. In my final painting, it doesn't look like I have that many oranges and yellows in it, even though they really are in the painting, and they were in the scene. So it looks like more greenery in the finished image of it, although the real painting does have a little more vibrancy than the actual picture that's shown on the screen here later in the video. But it was absolutely a beautiful day in the 70s, and there was lots of people on the patio of the Pine Tree Barn restaurant laughing and having a great time, and the patio overlooks the scene, so it's a very, very nice atmosphere to have lunch. It's a very popular place in my area to have lunch. So I'm putting in some trees that are a little bit darker there on the left side of that island. And they're not pine trees. I don't know what kind of trees they are, but they're not pine trees. But the ones to the right are pine trees. So I think I used a dark purple to put those trees in, and then now I'm layering it with some greens. I started off with a gray green, and then I'm putting a lighter green in. And if you notice, there's a little bit of a yellow green at the top. That's where the sunlight's hitting it. And then I'm using my pastel pencil to do the trunks of the trees, because these paintings are very small. They're only 4 3/4 inch tall by 12 inches wide. And so you can see that the pastels are very chunky, and so to get a really fine line is difficult unless you shave it off. You can shave it off, or you can use like a sandpaper, and you can kind of sculpt the end, but you waste a lot of pastels that way. So that's why I opt to have a set of pastel pencils with me when I'm painting plein air. That way I can get in and do fine detail at the end. So I'm just continuing to evaluate the colors I'm seeing. And just putting them in as I see them. And then I'll go back and I'll blend it to make it look more realistic. Now, I'm a realist painter, and my style is it's not horrifically tight, but it is tighter than definitely an impressionistic or an abstract painter. And that's just who I am at this stage in my art journey. I like the way I do my paintings. I mean, I like the results that I get, and I'm always learning and growing. And you'll find as an artist that you'll maybe start out following an artist or training under an artist that has a particular style, and you'll get a lot of your style from them. However, you'll change it to make it yours down the road. Once you become confident in what you're doing, you'll experiment, and then your own style will evolve. I've noticed that with my own painting styles over the years. I've taken a lot of portrait classes and a few plein air classes, and I'll maybe attempt to paint like the artists that I'm taking the classes from. And sometimes it's comfortable, sometimes it's not. So I might take parts and pieces from what I learn, and then I make it so it fits my style, my comfort level, and how I like to work. And so that's how you make your paintings unique from everybody else's. And even if you do take a plein air workshop from an artist and you're all painting the same scene, I think it's always amazing to see how different everybody's work is at the end of the workshop. You're all painting that same subject, but you're interpreting it so differently. So, for instance, if you were to come here to this scene with me and we were to paint this together, you might decide that you don't like the composition that I have chosen and something else speaks to you. And you might just decide to paint a smaller portion of what I'm doing, because I usually do like panoramic views. That's just part of my plein air style. And you might just want to hone in on maybe the island itself and really make that a magnificent painting. So I guess my point is just let who you are just be who you are and not try to be somebody else. Don't try to copy other people's style. Learn the basics of painting, practice, and just keep doing it, and eventually you'll start finding a comfort zone and your style will emerge. And every painting that you do, if people see it, they'll say, oh, well, that's a Bob Ross painting, that's a Terri Meyer painting, or, because they know your style, they know your look, they know your colors that you use, and it represents who you are. But as I said, you do evolve over time, so what I'm doing now might look totally different than what I'm doing 5 or 10 years from now. So, push yourself and just get out there and practice in life, because that's going to give you your best skill set, whether it be outdoors or indoors, because when you paint outside, your studio paintings become much better, much richer, because you have that experience from life that when you're looking at a reference photo, you'll say, oh my gosh, that photo looks totally dead. And the thing about plein air painting is you can paint outdoors and you can take a reference photo and then you take it back to the studio, but because you've been there for a couple of hours looking at that scene, and you look at that photograph and you say, that photograph has hardly any information in it compared to what I actually saw on location. And so the photograph looks pretty dead compared to the real life that you were painting. And I think that's what makes plein air paintings so much more alive and vibrant, because we're seeing the living nature versus just a representation on paper from a camera, and it makes a huge difference. So anyways, getting back to this painting, as you see it's evolving. The right side of the trees is being hit by sunlight, so I'm putting that in. And so I'm deciding, okay, well, I've got that part pretty well developed now, the first half of the painting, or 3/4. Now I'm going to put in those pine trees in the foreground. And so I'm just using a deep purple, and I'm trying to mimic the shape of the pine trees with the little pine needles coming upward and narrow at the top, fatter at the bottom. And so my actual strokes with the pastels are mimicking the shape of the trees. And you can do that if you're an oil painter or even a watercolorist with your paints, is you want to do the strokes that you're actually seeing in the shapes, and that makes it look more realistic as well. So I put the dark color down first. If you notice, now I'm putting more of a kind of a blue-green down, and that dark is showing through, and that was my intent there. So you're getting the shadows, and I'm saying it's a little too blue for me, so I'm adding a little orange to that to tone it down. And again, you see my blending stick there. I'm blending it, softening up those strokes. And when I blend, I do it the same way as using my pastels. I'm stroking it in the direction of the shapes that I'm seeing. And I'm noticing there's color variations in the pine trees because there's different varieties. So the one that I'm putting in now is it's got a lot more green in it, whereas the other one was a blue spruce, so it had a lot more blue-green in it. And I'm keeping the right-hand side lighter than the left-hand side, if you notice that. So I'm just adding a little stick there, just again positioning my trees. Where do I want to put those? And you know, since you're the artist, you don't have to make it exactly like the scene. If you feel that the trees need to be lower than what you're actually seeing, then you change that in your composition. That's a nice thing about landscape painting versus a portrait. You can't just change the eyes, position of the eyes, or the size of the eyes, otherwise it doesn't look like the person. But in landscapes, hey, you can change things and it still looks like the actual location, because you can actually walk around and change the vantage point of the trees just by walking around the scene a little bit. So, and you know, going up higher, going up lower, you're going to change that whole way the scene is laid out. So it's just like going around taking pictures with your camera with different angles. You'll see compositions emerge that you never would have thought about by just going up and down, sideways, and you know, walking around a little bit, taking different angles. And then you can take several of those different compositions that you looked at with your camera and then make those adjustments to whatever scene you want to make and to get a better composition. So I always walk around the site from very varying angles and just to see what I have to work with and what's really going to be the best place to paint from. So again, I'm just kind of filling that in, going back, detailing it, adding a little more color, adding a few more highlights. And right now the painting looks, you know, very, very colorful. And there was a lot of color in it, maybe not quite as much as what's showing up on screen, but the video footage here is very poor. So the lighting isn't really representing what the painting actually looks like. So the colors are more garish here in this video than they truly are in life. So you notice that I'm lightening the values in my colors, and see how those pine trees are popping forward now? Just by doing that, they are creating a lot of life into those trees. It's creating that dimension. Some of the trees look like they're going back and some are coming forward, and that's what you want to do as an artist, as a painter. Now, when you first start out, I mean, it's challenging, it's frustrating. There's so much to learn, you know, and there are people, others are saying, talk about values, you know, talk about the colors, talk about the warm colors, the cool colors. It's like, how do you remember all of that? It just becomes second nature after a while of doing it. And my best advice is to put yourself on a schedule and at least give yourself maybe one day a week or one day every couple weeks to go outside and spend 2 hours just experimenting. And you'll be amazed at over time how much better your work gets and how much you start understanding the painting process and how you start seeing more. Even when I'm not painting, I'm always looking at things, admiring things, and I'm looking at the shadows, and I'm looking at the colors in the shadows. It could be indoors or outdoors, but as an artist, we're always observing. And so it's in my mind, I'm making a painting even though I'm not actually on location. I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed sharing the painting experience with you. I'd like to hear from you. What do you find most challenging about plein air painting on location? This answer will assist me in developing future videos to meet your needs. If you'd like to see more of my videos, purchase a print of this painting or visit my website. Links are listed in the description box below. If you want to stay informed on future videos, hit the subscribe button and like this video. I appreciate your time over the last 30 minutes. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time at the easel. I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed sharing the painting experience with you. I'd like to hear from you. What do you find most challenging about plein air painting on location? This answer will assist me in developing future videos to meet your needs. If you'd like to see more of my videos, purchase a print of this painting or visit my website. Links are listed in the description box below. If you want to stay informed on future videos, hit the subscribe button and like this video. I appreciate your time over the last 30 minutes. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time at the easel.